Threats, new in kind or degree, constantly arise. Of these I mention two only. A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together. Akin to and largely responsible for the sweeping changes in our industrial military posture has been the technological revolution during recent decades. In this revolution, research has become central. It also becomes more formalized, complex, and costly. A steadily increasing share is conducted for, by, or at the direction of the federal government. Today, the solitary inventor, tinkering in his shop, has been overshadowed by task forces of science in laboratories and testing fields. In the same fashion, the free university, historically the fountainhead of free ideas and scientific discovery, has experienced a revolution in the conduct of research. Partly because of the huge costs involved, a government contract becomes virtually a substitute for intellectual curiosity. For every old blackboard, there are now hundreds of new electronic computers. The prospect of domination of the nation's scholars by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and is gravely to be regarded. Yet in holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite. It is the task of statesmanship to mold, to balance, and to integrate these and other forces, new and old, within the principles of our democratic system, ever aiming toward the supreme goals of our free society.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions.
Welcome to the Patriot Think Tank, folks. We are back on with another Wednesday Night Live. My apologies for last week. I was in West Virginia checking out the new property we bought there, my brother and I. Some undeveloped land that we're looking. It's a hunting cabin and such. We're looking to develop and build, not into like a development, but just for us, maybe a small cabin or something like that for now. We're just going to kind of deck out the hunting cabin and have some fun. We went down there, enjoyed ourselves, bought an ATV, was checking out the property with it. That was fun. We shot some guns, did some repairs. So it was a trip. Maybe I'll flash some videos at some point on the broadcast, once I get a decent compilation together. But yeah, I'm excited about that property. So today we're going to talk about the deep state. And, I think, everyone who is dialed into this channel has some familiarity with the deep state. So I find it hard to kind of teach people a lesson here. Although there may be things that people didn't know. And I started off with Eisenhower in his final speech. You can look up that speech in its entirety on YouTube or, Rumble or whatever. Just look up Eisenhower's farewell speech, where he gets into detail about the military-industrial complex. One of the things that I wanted to point out was the history of those three presidents, Truman, Eisenhower, and then Kennedy, who all took over in succession and all had grave concerns about the CIA, because I think it's very relevant to today when you look at what they're doing to Trump, right? And, for those of you, again, who follow the channel, I don't have a problem being overly critical of Trump. I have no issues with that. I'll criticize anyone. But in the end, probably end up voting for him, right? So, but I'm going to be critical, and it is what it is. But that being said, if DeSantis wins the primary, I'll vote for him too. I think they're both good candidates. But what they're doing to Trump is kind of next level. Excuse me, I got a bad throat from the trip out. Got my trusty water here, but I think Trump is next level. I think with Trump, what they're doing to Trump, to me, proves a few things. But I think there's an element of it that's a good thing for Trump supporters, right? For those of us who can't stand watching what's going on with all these indictments, and they're all nonsense, right? Like everyone knows that. Even on the leftist networks, they talk about it like it's nonsense. And Ruby Bolding says there are no stars on here. There should be. You should have the ability to, if you're looking to send Facebook stars, you should have the ability to do that. I think it's like a penny per star or something like that. So for everyone else, I definitely appreciate the support on Facebook. But you should be able to do that. That being said, just to get back on topic, what these folks are doing to Donald Trump right now, it keeps pushing. I can't lie. It keeps pushing me back in his corner as I sit and wait. And I really want to see him debate the big dogs, at least. They're not big dogs because he's so far ahead in the polls. Like, you need to debate number 2 and 3. If someone's over 10% in the polls, you can't run from them in a debate. Even if your loyalists will still vote for you, like, for the love of God, like, how could you not want to see these people debate? Like, the guy's got to earn it, man. He's got to earn it. Don't tell me he already earned it and they stole it. I get that, but you earn it each time you go. Like he's beholden to us, and I demand, especially after a lot of the comments he made, to hear from him. But the fact is, the way that the deep state goes after him tells me this, is that they don't have a way. They're not confident at all that they can pull anything off in the next election. Because if they were, they would not attack him. If they were, they would just let the media attack him slightly, and then let him whoop himself, because it wouldn't matter, right? Because they'd have it all fixed, so it wouldn't matter. So they would just let him get everybody riled up, do all the stadium sellouts, do all the stuff he does, and then let the day come and he just loses. And then they would say, see, you know, everybody think, they try to blow it up like everybody loves this guy, but there ain't enough to vote for him. And they would just pretend that way. But they don't do that. They're trying to eliminate him from the election, which means that they're fairly confident that if he runs, they can't do anything about it, which is a big deal. Right? And it's good news for us that that's the case. The bad news is, I think a lot of us are skeptical that sooner or later, with one of these, pardon the pun, trumped up charges, that they'll get a judge who's willing to go with it, even though that will eventually get overturned. But if they can do it at the right time, and I think that's what they're trying to do, they can start getting excuses to try and disqualify him in certain states, which is where, these people's full out assault on liberty is something to behold. I mean, it's crazy, how much the federal government has been weaponized, and how much they're blatantly and boldly going forward with it, despite how obvious it is. And and it goes back to, for those that just getting on for, recently, I've done videos on mass formation. I've done videos on, on the conformity experiments with Solomon Asch, and kind of got into some of the similarities that were there. And they must believe, right, that this 20 to 30% of the population who are what I call mass formated, meaning they're a part of a mass formation that's very difficult to break them free from. And those people don't care, right? They're screaming to weaponize. Go ahead, weaponize it. Yeah. Like that's who those people are. Now, the normally you'd say 10 to 20%, that's not enough. But when you've got the entire media behind you, and I think we all know, right? The entirety of the mainstream media behind you, it can seem like a lot more. It can seem like it's half the country, or more than half the country, or whatever. So, but to go into the history of this, so Truman starts the CIA, right? I think most people know that. He started the CIA, and he did that after World War II, because his feeling was, during that experience, he was getting conflicting intelligence from different agencies, and he felt like some of each agency had its own small agenda, and he felt like he needed to take all that information, let them iron it out themselves, and bring to the president one point, maybe two opposing points of view or whatever, but not 4 or 5 different completely different topics and priorities. And so he created the CIA, designed specifically just to get intelligence on foreign entities. And that was it. And he watched it grow, even during his tenure, into something that began to freak him out a little bit. And I'm going to get into an op-ed that he did literally to the day, 1 month after Kennedy's assassination, which the timing of which tells you, what he was trying to say, right? But after Truman came Eisenhower, who then experienced what this military-industrial complex was growing into. And as he says in his speech, never before in our history did we have, like before in our history, prior to World War II, where we just galvanized all this industrial strength and power, and we're able to just produce at levels that the world was just stunned by. And prior to that, if we needed bullets, then we made bullets. If we needed, muskets or swords or guns, then we made them. But it was a compartmentalized process. Whereas after World War II, it became an industry, right? And so all of these big factories and big everything that had turned over and converted themselves into making weapons, all of these companies at the end of the war were kind of like, all right, well, we don't want to go away. and now they're incredibly wealthy, and now they have a lot of influence, and now you've created the CIA. So now the deep state is in its infancy. And Eisenhower tried to call that out on his way out the door. And it's funny because that speech gets used by everybody. That speech gets used, everyone from Bernie Sanders, to Ron DeSantis, to Donald Trump, whoever. I mean, as far as you can go right to as far as you can go left, they're using that Eisenhower farewell speech. So it's baffling how powerful a speech that was. And it wasn't until Kennedy came in where he was about to put an end to it. And Chris White's over on YouTube. I do think that I agree with you. Donald Trump needs to debate. All right, yeah, you're on Donald Trump. Yep, because some of Trump could have had to work at the living, but on debate night they could really hear Trump and decide further. Yeah, and that's the thing. I just want to hear him because he says some things that concern me. So I'm like, I'll get into that in a little bit. I'll cover some more of that in a second. I just want to get through this deep state point. So when Eisenhower gave this speech, it was epic. Kennedy comes in. Eisenhower is basically, he's unsure how Kennedy's going to be in this office because he's so young. But they definitely communicated about this very topic. And I haven't been able to find records of Truman doing the same. But I do know that I know Truman went after Kennedy at one point. But in the end, they're all in cahoots on this one point that the deep state has to go, right? And Kennedy does his famous speech. If you want to look up the speech itself, it's called President and the Press, where he addresses the press, and that's the one I put in the ticker leading into this, where he talks about secret societies and how how we are not for secret societies, how we don't support that kind of thing. He's telling the media that I know these societies are out there, right? And he's also quietly and professionally addressing Operation Mockingbird, which he also knows is a thing, right? And with that being said, there are some people, out there who believe that was the speech that got him killed. I don't think it was a speech that got him killed. Right. I think it was where he was headed politically. Now, I guess I understand what they're saying, but the fact is, Kennedy was about to do some damage to the deep state. And even at this young phase of existence, that couldn't be allowed. And I can tell you, here's one reason I would like to see the debates, right? Because I want to see one of these candidates throw at Trump. Why didn't you release all the Kennedy files? When legally they all had to be released unless the president of the United States, said that it was in the national interest to keep them secret. Why, as the president of the United States, did you make that call and not just let them be released as the law had demanded? Why did you pull that clause of the law to stop it? Now, Pompeo put something in his ear, and I'm sure he's not gonna, disclose exactly what that was. But the fact is, the other candidates have all pledged to release all that. So the fact that he had the opportunity and didn't, makes me feel like he's not going to do it if it comes up again. And I want to see those files. They will forever be relevant, because if those files show that the CIA, and you have to think that there's something crazy in those files, or they would have just released them. So in the end, at this point, I want them unredacted. They're all dead now. Everybody involved with that is dead now. So the only reason to hang on to them is that it does something to the agency to release them. And what else could there be? Your imagination can run wild, but those documents will forever be relevant, because not only will they, even for the greatest naysayer, not only will they go ahead and just prove outright the existence of deep state as we know it, but it'll shut down it'll start rearranging the entire industrial complex. People now will be up and on. They will not be just blindly walking through. If people understand that we had a government agency that assassinated a U.S. president or even took part in it in any way, obviously that's unacceptable, and that agency will not survive that. How will it be replaced with another agency that would do the same thing? I mean, I don't know that the NSA wouldn't be, just as bad. All this alphabet soup, DARPA, all of it. I don't trust any of it. I don't trust any of the FBI. We know we can't trust. I mean, the lies coming from them are just in your face and insulting. They're walking up to you telling you that your gray t-shirt is white, and they're going to keep telling it to you until you agree that your gray t-shirt is white. And if you never agree, you go to jail. You get SWAT teams showing up at your house. I mean, that's pretty much the way it's been with them, right? As I am this advocate of Article 5, and I am this, massive supporter of Article 5, deep state is one of the things that I'm very interested in taking out. They're one of the things that are high on my priority list to take out. When it comes to Trump and DeSantis and these guys, like, I want to see one of those two guys. Like, I don't care how the whole primary falls on or whatever, because honestly, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. There's only so much a president can do, and I feel like both of them will do both. Trump will make everyone feel better, but practically speaking, DeSantis will do the same thing. For that matter, so will Ramaswamy. Although there's a part of me that feels like Ramaswamy will get eaten alive at this point if he got in this early to that seat. But between DeSantis and Trump, these are two alpha dogs who know how to handle executive positions and whatever. As far as the presidency can go, they'll be fine. What I would like to see is one of those two head the DOJ. So since it's likely that Trump will win, right, we'd have to think it would be, but can you imagine Ron DeSantis taking over the DOJ? I mean, honestly, to me, I would actually rather see Trump do that just because of I mean, it would just be such poetic justice. I know everyone's like, no other position but the presidency, but I honestly believe he would do much more damage to the deep state in that role, which is still an executive role. But he would do so much more damage to them if he was directly running them. Because he has a history of picking bad people. He just surrounds himself with the worst people. I don't think anybody would argue that. And my fear with him is that he's going to do it again. Like, they're just going to send more people at him who flatter him and flatter him and flatter him, and then he puts him in position and then they stab him in the back. I mean, that's been the repetitive story, throughout. So, but either way, I mean, just to make that point, I would love to see him go ahead and take over the Department of Homeland Security and run all of it, and just start firing people like mad. Just go in there and just start whacking them. You're fired. Either one of them, just to see them all get terminated. That is what I would love to see. But we'll see what happens, right? We'll see what happens. But nonetheless, they continue. It was 1 month. We know what happened to Kennedy, right? We know what happened to Kennedy for his positions on deep state. And what ended up going down was he was shot, right? He was killed. And, then the conspiracies began. I think we're at a point where it's not really a conspiracy anymore. I mean, if you had to, based on the facts that are all out right now, you would have to pick some form of deep state being responsible for this hit. I mean, it was obvious when you see Ruby come in and kill their lone gunman, and then Ruby dies. It's like, come on, like, this is amateur hour now. That's what we're supposed to believe. I mean, it's just nuts. It's nuts to me. All right. Also, they can listen to all the candidates. Back on the debates. They listen to all the candidates together and figure out between all the candidates together talking. Yeah, the only candidates I think are serious. Like, there's an element. I was kind of pissed when Trump didn't get on the stage the first time. This whole, I gotta look at my polls. People need to freaking decide whether you're believing in polls or not. I'm so tired of the let's see what the poll says. Oh, is it for me? Oh, look at the polls. And then like 10 minutes later, a poll comes out that they don't like. Well, you can't believe polls. Like, enough with the polls already. I don't even know when the last time a presidential poll was accurate. Like I forget this early in a primary. Like for those that are new to this, I mean, this is so early in the primary. You're never talking about polls at this point. So, but anyway, you gotta. It's your job. Like it's your job. Like you are not. A king. You need to come out and speak to the American people and sell yourself. And the fact that he doesn't do it just pisses me off because, to be honest with you, there's a part of me that feels like there's a good chance that DeSantis will or Ramaswamy, but I'll tell you more and more. I'm thinking Ramaswamy. There might be something going on with him and Trump. Like Trump went ahead and started talking nice about him. Ramaswamy is pretty much all about Trump during his own campaign. And I'm just like, I'm not sure what the relationship is there, but like my brother brought this up to me, and then I started looking at it, and then I watched the debates, and then I heard Trump compliment Ramaswamy, and I'm like, all right, that is so not Donald Trump to be complimenting someone who's running against him for president. That there's like part of me thinks now, like after going through that Ramaswamy just knows he's too young and inexperienced to win this time around. But he's setting the stage because when Trump gets up for two things. One, if Trump does something happen to him and someone else needs to get elected, or if he wins, and then you've got all, because the hardcore Trump supporter, like part of me just wants Trump to win, get the 4 years over with, so I don't have to listen to that ignorance anymore. Because I'm going to tell you right now, it's bad out there for some of this stuff. It's bad out there. So, I mean, they don't know much, if anything, about how the country works. These are the people that were screaming for the vice president to overturn an election in his own favor. Like that made sense to them, right? That's the group that I'm talking about. Like there's plenty of reason to hate Pence, but that ain't one of them. So, like, but in the end, those folks, look, let's just say this. Trump and Vivek, to me are kind of on the same handle. I mean, if Trump wins, I think Vivek is setting himself up to grab that zombie base and then try and build from it with the rest of the 50 million or so Trump supporters out there who are sane, right? Like not like those 20 mil or so. To me, when Trump stood there and it was like, I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and they'll still vote for me. That's who he's talking about, right? Like there actually are people out there who would do that. That nothing will ever be critical. No one will ever say anything critical about the guy. He coaxes the House into making McCarthy speaker. Nobody supported that, but they pretended it didn't happen. He said Zelensky's an honorable man. Nobody agrees with that, but everybody just forgot that it happened. China doesn't hate us. They just want to. They just love China. It's like, oh my God, read a history book, dude. Read a history book. But whatever. I'd still vote for him because I don't think his ignorance on those issues, would collapse anything. He'd still want to put up the show and dance with China. So he's not going to give China anything. But like not understanding the fundamental relationship between the CCP and the United States just means he's going to be another one to add to the list of someone who gets eventually duped by the CCP when they come back and say, "Oh, you know what? We were wrong. We were wrong. We want to be more capitalist. We want to be, let's make a deal." And I feel like Trump will go in and make a deal, just like Nixon did, just like Reagan and the rest, and Bush, all of them. Clinton lets them into the World Trade Organization. They hated us all throughout that. All throughout that. There's nothing about it that they just love China. They hate since 1948. Mao is documented as claiming he will take down the United States if it takes 100 years. That's where the 100-year target came from. There's no misunderstanding that. It was a little disturbing that he didn't know that, but it is what it is. Ramaswamy for Trump's VP, that's possible too. There's some angle going on there. There's some angle going on between Trump and Ramaswamy. Without that relationship there, Ramaswamy is in like 3%, 4%. But he's feeding in mass droves whole cows of red meat to the Trump base, which is leaving anyone else who's trying to be, which number one, though, makes him not an alpha male to me. Like, I don't look at him as an alpha male. I just don't. I don't. I know he started companies, but they're tech companies. And I do, people who have these quick start tech companies that go boom, right? I don't look at Mark Zuckerberg as an alpha male, right? Like, I just don't. And Ramaswamy, I love his points of view. I really do. The things he says, the stances he takes, all of that I love. But I definitely, when I see him, I am not thinking alpha male. I'm just not. I see Trump, I see DeSantis, I'm thinking alpha male. Like, these are guys who roll with it. They just do what they want to do, and it is what it is. Ramaswamy, I don't know. He's just not in that place for me. But yeah, he could be the personal manager and replace the people Trump fires. Yeah, maybe. I don't know that he's experienced enough to do that. I mean, again, it's a tech company. Not sure what he's looking for. When he has to help appoint someone to DOJ and all of that. I mean, I don't want to kill a guy. I'm just saying I can name on one hand how many good people, how many like top flight people that Trump has chosen to work around him that haven't betrayed him, right? Kellyanne Conway is one. She's a friggin' alpha dog out there killing it. Like that whole Mueller investigation, aside from a few friggin' pops at the mic, he didn't even have to deal with, man. He just freaking unleashed her on the press. And it was just, she was just eating them alive. So she was a score. But there aren't many like her in his presidency. Most of those people backstabbed him. And then he replaced them with people that did the same. So I'm concerned. I'm concerned about it, I guess. That's the best way that I could say it. I'm concerned. Obama never exposed 9/11. No one's going to expose 9/11. So why would you trust either of them, either party? I don't trust anyone, Michael. I don't trust anyone. I'm well documented for saying that. And that includes Donald Trump. I trust no one. There is no one in the political sphere. Like, I don't vote for Trump because I trust him. Like, I vote for him because I feel like, even with his shortcomings, and there are many of them, but even with those, for the presidency role, he's as good a fit as anyone. And frankly, at this point, I just don't want to deal with all the blowback. If he loses the primary in some way, right? And I could collectively hear like at least a couple of million Trump supporters being like, there's no way he loses the primary. Like, every time you say that around those guys, they have to bark at you and tell you how impossible it is. But even in a hypothetical, you can't even use the hypothetical. But like in a hypothetical situation, all right, if DeSantis somehow pulled it off and somehow beat Trump in the primary, I mean, instead of just saying, wow, like that was wild and, all right, let's get behind DeSantis. Like this group will be like, no, that was fixed too. And DeSantis, I mean, the amount of people calling DeSantis out of nowhere, right? Not out of nowhere, but it's on orders, direct orders from the Trump campaign to start attacking this dude. And they foot soldiers along. They just go right after it. And they just start crapping on one of the better patriots we have in this freaking country, whose track record is badass. They start calling him deep state and all these ridiculous stories about insurance agencies. They just bite on everything. It's like watching Stu Peters and being like, yeah, man, that's all true. It's wild. It's wild to me. Like, it's primary season, folks. This is status quo, par for the course. Like DeSantis does not think, I don't think DeSantis believes that he's going to change the mind of that Trump supporter. But he does have his own positions on things that are different from Trump. He's very much against vaccines, not in general, but the whole COVID situation. He has taken action. It's not like he's just talking from the stump. The guy's got action that he's taken against it and took it before anyone else did. And you say, oh, well, it's just in Florida. Nonsense. There are states that have followed his lead on a wide variety of issues. Stuff that he's done, that he paved the way for, things that other governors didn't even know existed. Trump doesn't even know existed. Do you think Trump really understood what a Confucius Institute is? He has no effing idea what a Confucius Institute is. I don't even think if he hears DeSantis talk about it, that he'll take the time to look it up. But that's whatever. In the end, I don't want to start banging them against each other. I'm just saying, don't go dogging on DeSantis. Like, don't be that guy, because you look foolish to someone who understands politics, including Trump supporters who understand politics. You look foolish. When you start going down those roads, you look like someone who literally will believe anything. Anything that sounds conspiratorial, you make yourself look like you'll bite on that. If you're willing to go down the road with no proof and no evidence, none. Everyone who's accused him of that, if they did it politely and I'm engaged in polite conversation, then I politely explain to them they're incredibly wrong. But if they're not, if they're trying to be wild and stupid, then I break them over my knee with some facts and send them running back to Truth Social. Because the stuff that people are willing to slander, there are not enough DeSantises in this world to be eating the ones that exist. Trump will win anyway. There's no need to eat your own. It's one of the points I wanted to get out there. So let me see what we got it. Would you trust either of them or either party, right? I responded to that. So I think what's going on here is like George W. Bush, right? So we got some comments from YouTube today. Usually they come from Facebook, but I'll take it. So yeah, like George W. Bush, right? Do conservatives really support George W. Bush? Like, do we not see through him for what he is, right? Now, I don't know if I'm buying that he was all in on 9/11. I'm not convinced of that yet. I've thoroughly watched these 9/11 videos. I was deep into that for a while, and I'm not. There's a few different methods people accuse the government of. Some say he was in on it. Others are saying it was above him, so to speak, or below him, depending on how you want to look at it. But like, I don't want to turn this into an episode of that, but I could do a whole episode just on the 9/11 thing. And trust me, I was right there, not right there, like on the scene, but my mother was working like 5 blocks from the Trade Center. I was in Hackensack. Like, this hit home for us. I've been to the top. My mom used to work there, took me there as a kid. She worked on the 102nd floor. Like, I've been in that building when it was rocking back and forth. Like, it was a wild building, man. It really was. And it takes, that's why the planes were just absorbed by the building. Like, it was designed for a lot of give. I mean, I could tell you'd be sitting up there, and there were times where stuff would fall off the desk because of the sway that it would get into from the winds. Clouds be below you. I mean, it was pretty wild. I love that place, though. I do love that place. So I wanted to talk a little bit. I'll keep taking questions or comments on this. And if there's anyone on here who does, came onto the channel because maybe you saw, one of my other videos or something else that I did, you have a question about something like Article 5 or something regarding, what it is or anything like that. Just want to put it out there. No matter what I'm talking about on these live events, I put the brakes on for Article 5 questions. So if there's anyone, because if you don't know, that's the reason why I'm not so ridiculously animated about the whole presidential thing. Like, I feel like we can't lose to the left, right? Like, we can't have a Gavin Newsom come in But as far as whether it's Trump, DeSantis, whatever, like that's they'll all hold the water, just as good as the next. The real work comes from us, right? The real work comes from us. So any questions, and that comes through Article 5. So, and that's our second clause in Article 5 of the Constitution that allows us to make the changes that presidents cannot. That allows us to directly make the changes that Congress will not, right? And for us to make the changes that the SCOTUS have screwed up. Those are the changes that matter. How is it possible to get out of debt? It is possible, but no president's ever going to do it. They're never going to do it. That machine rolls on. I mean, who's going to want? Who wants? I don't know. Who wants to do well for the country more, right? In most people's minds now than Donald Trump did. Well, he added $8 trillion to the debt. But we get enamored on the shiny toys that they always get us enamored with. We're like, but unemployment and people are working, but it's like that's not the barometer. Like imagine you're on a cart, and that cart is headed straight down a hill, and at the end of that hill is a cliff, and at the bottom of that cliff is a bunch of burning lava, and it's raining on you the whole way down. The unemployment rate being low, that's like it stopped raining. But the cart is still going full speed. You know what I'm saying? So like when we're looking at the existential change that the country really needs, it's not a better unemployment rate. If you just get out of the way, like if you just get the government out of the way, the unemployment rate solves itself. It solves itself. But even then, it's not it's not indicative of how you get out of this. In the end, there requires changes. There requires the government to be held to a standard which they currently are not. And they're not held to that standard because the Constitution has been interpreted over the course of the last century by the SCOTUS in such a way, in a lot of small decisions and some big, but a lot of small decisions that allowed for the creation of a deep state, that allowed for the government to be able to do most of what it does today. I mean, the Fed should have been ruled unconstitutional. It was not. Woodrow Wilson was allowed in the worst year in American history, in my perspective, at least as far as constitutional legislation and things of that nature. By far, it's the worst year. I mean, in 1913, we amended the Constitution to add an income tax. We removed the power of state legislatures to be able to control their appointed senators by taking that out of their hands and making them directly elected. And then right on the night before Christmas Eve, Woodrow Wilson caps the deal by signing the Fed into existence. Easily the worst year legislatively and constitutionally in United States history. But these are all things that presidents cannot fix. These are all things, I mean, the people allowed those things to happen. I don't know what the hell was going on in the population that year, but they knew they had the right mix of people, and they didn't waste it. They went right after it. And brought us just that much closer to a democracy and that much further away from a constitutional republic. But we still are a constitutional republic, of course. But they don't like it. Progressives try to undo that, and that's one way and they got a lot done that year. Let's just say that. The bad guys did a lot of winning that year. Right? But like the only way to undo those things, the only way to fix those things, because these things now, amendments that are passed or court decisions, there's only one way to undo them, right? The way the Supreme Court has interpreted the Commerce Law, the way they've interpreted the 16th Amendment. I mean, they put almost no restriction, none. They jokingly throw away any arguments that something should not be taxable or should not be allowed to be taxed. When there were decades on end before that amendment where the courts were saying it is absolutely illegal, it is absolutely unconstitutional to tax income. They had to do it by amendment. Those are things, okay, that cannot be fixed by a president. Enforcing a balanced budget, enforcing one with clear punishments and clear accountability measures can only be done if written directly into the Constitution. That's it. It's the only way to do it. It's the only way to erase some 100 years of bad freaking fiscal policy decisions by the SCOTUS, giving these people power. Giving these people power. And that's what this is. So if you have questions about it, logistics about it, how does it work, all that stuff, you let me know. Because this is a process where the states, without the say of the federal government, can convene a convention and be able to select their own delegates as soon as 2/3 of the states agree. We've got 19 states on board already. We need 34. It's close. We got more than half. More than half already on board. But the reason we don't have more is people don't understand it. They don't understand it. Or they've been scared away from it. One or the other. And that's because of the death of civics, right? So, and I've spoken too far in depth about the death of civics. If you don't know how this country works, or if you think you do, if you think, because that the 2024 election will change the face of the country, then you don't understand civics. That's what I would tell you. Because before I started getting into it, I thought I understood it too. And boy, was I wrong. Boy, was I wrong. The federal government, it's the child of the states. So if you just look at it from that way, everything that's supposed, when they say power to the people, there's no power to the people coming from the federal government. Like the American people don't control, the American people don't have power over the government because we elect officials into that. That's not where the power comes from. The power was designed to come from the local legislature. So that if you have a grievance, you don't need to write a letter to Nancy Pelosi. She ain't going to read that damn thing. What you need to do is go to your local state legislature in your district, and other people go to theirs. Because when the state legislature, it's like Voltron. When the state legislatures combine, they're a mammoth power. They're an inusurpable power in the United States. When the local legislators get together, there's nothing that they can't do. There's nothing that they can't do. And the whole way, the reason that it was designed that way is because they are the closest to us. So when, as we sit here and say, Biden this, Biden that, deep state, this and that, all of that is noise. And this is what I'm trying to get across to people. It's all noise. Like we literally have, if we just take a moment to understand it, to understand how the Constitution works, to understand where our power lies, and stop listening to people who are like, well, America's a corporation, so these people are nonsense. The Constitution is what it is. And if we put in an amendment to the Constitution that says there are term limits now for federal officials. There are term limits then for federal officials. Period. Done. No matter what Congress does, they can't pass a law to overturn it. There's nothing they can do. The only thing they could do is get together 2/3 of the House and Senate and propose new amendments, and good luck getting those ratified by the states. There's nothing they can do. There's nothing they fear more than this. Because forevermore, the relationship between government and people will be changed. And it'll be a great reset, a reset to 1776 federal government authority. That's where the reset will be. The federal government will be reset back to its original powers. Because anytime they get out of line, the border. So if you don't know, the three topics are fiscal restraints. These are the things that the convention would be allowed to discuss under the calling that the 19 states are on board for now. Term limits for all government officials, fiscal restraints, and amendments on government overreach of power, restricting government overreach of power. Those are the three things. So there's no border in there, right? But it doesn't matter, because if the process goes through and completes, we could always, and the government decides they're still going to continue to not take care of the border. Well, right now in the Constitution, that's their responsibility. If they're going to refuse to do it and refuse that responsibility, we can mandate federal funding to allow, we can do whatever we want. This is my point. Yes, it will take a ton of agreement. Yes, it will take, it's not easy. But when you come across something, as this great American experiment continues, and we are now in a phase where we are in a dark time in this experiment. We are now in a phase where we're seeing what can happen when you put too much trust in an institution that the founders considered to be evil, but necessary. Right? We now know where that road leads to. The founders knew. They told us, but we time went on. Everyone, I got a problem. Government, fix it for me. Now we know where that leads. So the experiment moves on. We come out of these dark days. We make some adjustments. You know what? This whole 60-year congressional term, that's not working out. Make an adjustment. This whole not passing a budget in the last freaking 20 years, it's not working out. Let's make an adjustment. This is how it works. This is how the experiment moves on. Without it, if we keep thinking we're going to elect our way out of tyranny, we're done. We're done. Finished. You think they can't create another crisis? So we have Trump in office again, or DeSantis in office. You think they're not going to just create another crisis? I mean, this is where it's at, folks, right? These are the solutions. These are the answers. There is a path. And you can start by signing the petition. You can sign that on the website. I got a link to it straight to the Convention of States website. They'll send a letter to your local representative. You put in your information, pulls up your representative. They'll send a letter to them on your behalf. But then you got to click the volunteer button, and you got to give a damn. If you don't know who your local representative is, well, then we know we got the first thing. You know what's first thing you need to do. Because if you don't know who that is, it doesn't matter if you know who Trump is. It doesn't matter. There's no Superman. There's no Superman. People are either going to own this and do it, or they're not going to own it. And just let these doo-doo-doos run away with it. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. You think that the CCP and friggin', their little minions like the WEF and whatnot, you think they're afraid of the Second Amendment from an authoritarian standpoint? They're dying for you to use it. They're poking you to use it. Because the second you do, this is an old Chinese tactic, and they used it in January 6th, so you know what it looks like. As soon as you do, now they have reason to come throw you in the freaking gulag like they did to these January 6th folks over nothing. But now you're a patriot extremist. They've already coined the term. They would love for you to just be, for those people who are like, well, the Second Amendment's the only way. No, it's not. The Second Amendment's the way that you can get yourself thrown in a can, all right, and maybe never come out. Because they'll put you in there on some domestic terrorism charges or some crazy crap like that. You don't even have to pull your gun out of your holster. You don't even have to have a gun. You can just be present when something like that goes down, and they will come find you. This, however, this is a path, right, to get it fixed without giving them a reason. Without giving them a reason to act a fool. It's the way you take it back peacefully and constitutionally. George Mason said it himself that he would rather, we need to put this in rather than trust this to chance or violence, knowing that revolutions never work. They always end poorly, with the exception of ours. Every revolution but that was the point. Is that ours acknowledged that every revolution in the past had failed, and they were wise enough to take precautions for it. So, so all I can tell you, all right, all I can tell you is don't go down. So the moral of the story is here, right? We went through the deep state. We went through people going down terrible rabbit holes and walking out believing the garbage that they hear. Something else that just can't happen, right? Can't happen. Cannot have people doing that. And it's not that it's just bad for you. It's bad for everybody, right? It's bad for everybody. And I just realized now I'm trying to pull up a clip here, and I lost all of my like it usually shows me thumbnails. And now it's not showing me Ugats. Huh? Now I get Ugats. I get nothing out of this thing. What in the world? They want me to just guess. This freaking software is the worst. Let me tell you. It's the worst. But it's only for my lives, and I don't have a producer, so I have to do it all on my own. So there won't be an outro today, I guess, because they're not going to let me know where it is. It's amazing. Hold on one, guys. All right, so I'm going to try this one more time. Just because I've always used the same outro. And no, they probably pulled it all out of my friggin' file or something. I don't know what's going on with these clowns. But all right, no worries. That being said, folks, all right, I can't find it, so I got to let it go. But know this. So we'll recap the deep state, right? Falling down the wrong rabbit holes. Article 5, right? We talked a little bit about it, but keep in mind every time that you come on board, all right, and check us out, and you can join the Patriot Think Tank group. It's a wide open group. I administrate it, but I don't administrate it, right? But like I can't protect you from Facebook and what they're going to do, but I can tell you, unless you're like a bot or you're putting up some kind of porn or some crazy stuff, I don't take anything down. I leave everything up there. So in the end, whatever you put up, I will never take it down. Right. So sorry, I get distracted. That's what happens. I'm looking at the side into different stuff and trying to make sure there are no comments and whatnot. But all right, folks, until next time, I will see you next Wednesday. I'm going to try to put up a video midweek, but we'll see what happens with that. You can follow me on Rumble. You can follow me on Facebook. The largest following is on Facebook, but I do still stream to Rumble and to YouTube when they're not throwing me off. and to Twitch, actually. So, and we're on Twitter as well. I don't tweet that much because I don't really know how to get a following going. And I don't know. I was never a big Twitter fan. I tried to start doing it when Elon Musk came on, but again, I don't know how to start that base and get that going. And again, I'm not a huge fan of the platform, so it's kind of whatever. But until next time, folks, I'm out.